Hi, welcome to another reading of Ardamin Clone 7. We're currently in Chapter 3 and this is Part 4. Now he had seen a living controller. It didn't look any different to the dead one he had seen in the video autopsy footage. Yellow cat-like eyes and oversized head made him wonder if the bones were reinforced to take the extra load on the neck, or a thicker muscle structure. The autopsy video never delved into those sort of specifics. It was more concerned with where to strike to get the kill, or possibly strategic ways of knocking them out without the controller self-terminating. He was brought to the controller in the center of the mob. He looked behind himself, but saw that they had closed ranks where they had parted just before. Not that he had expected to escape. Shackled the way he was, he could barely manage a moderate-paced shuffle and had no arm movements. A drone opened a bottle of water and lifted it up to Ardamin's lips. He thought of not drinking it in case it was laced with a toxin, but that didn't make much sense, so he drank what was offered. The drone turned away, then the whole crowd turned the same way, and they began to shuffle out of the car park onto the road. Ardamin had little choice but to move. He looked towards the setting sun, that beautiful orange ball heading down over the visible horizon. The drone seemed to move faster at night, but his stride was very limited, so they tried to keep at Ardamin's pace. He had read, or rather, Matt Ardamin had, of a man in Australia that walked across several states of that vast, almost American-sized land. He had an unusual stride pattern known as the Cliff Young Shuffle. His feet barely lifted off the ground, coupled with a shortened stride length. Cliff Young had won the Sydney to Melbourne Ultramarathon, a 544-mile endurance race taking 5 days, which he ran without rest, using this technique at the advanced age of 61. Not only had he won that particular race, but he shaved 2 days from the standing record of the event. This elderly man proved that distance of hundreds, if not thousands of miles could be conquered using this type of shortened shuffle. It took several miles before Ardamin could find a comfortable enough shuffle that allowed him not to be pushed along by the drones behind him. Hours passed and it had gotten much cooler, but he was sweating. They hadn't stopped. They just kept on going. No noise except the thousands of feet pounding down on the concrete highway. He had no idea of the actual time except of the time he was keeping in his mind. Long time ago, Matt Ardamin was trained to keep time in his head, a trait that was passed along with all his knowledge to his clones. It meant that even without a watch, he had a pretty good idea of the time, even when he first woke up. Of course, the shocks that Ardamin had endured temporarily put it out of whack, but upon seeing the sunset earlier, it started his clock off again. About 3 a.m., he thought to himself. This was known as the time that most people couldn't keep their eyes open. But these weren't people, and they showed no sign of slowing at all. He seemed to think that they were making about 4 to maybe 4.5 miles per hour. Depending on where they were taking him, it could take a very long time. They had been on the road now for 9 hours and they were approaching Flagstaff, about an hour or so out, unless they bypassed it. The highways were clear of all cars and trucks. They had been pushed out of the way for years. What was left, as far as the military knew, the roads were used for the hordes to travel. So with some air drones and satellite coverage, you could travel the road yourself in relative safety, without the risk of running into a travelling horde. It was about 4 a.m. when they reached Flagstaff. His legs hurt where they had been chafing against the chains. The same for his arms and hands. They stopped abruptly close to the centre of town. They had exited the freeway at East Butler Avenue and stopped at the bus station. Once again he was offered water. The first time in 10 hours of forced marching. He drained the bottle, gulping down the precious liquid. Another bottle was offered and he drained that too. And that's where we'll leave it. See you next time. Bye. Hopefully I'm a better writer now.